Thank you very much, Professor Cho, for the introduction. And I would also like to thank Professor Park and the Korean Society of Perinatology for giving me the opportunity to speak in front of such a distinguished audience. Thank you very much. So I will be talking about whole goat milk formula today, a clinically validated choice for formula-fed infants. Here's my disclaimer. I'm an employee of the Dairy Goat Co-operative. And I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about the Dairy Goat Co-operative, who is based in New Zealand. So we were the first to make goat infant formula in the world. About 40 years ago we started, and that meant we had to really invest into a lot of research. So we have done more than 35 years of research, and we have more than 60 publications in peer-reviewed journals, and about 43 of those are on goat milk nutrition. So we're the home of the number world researched goat infant formula. So I will be talking today about why goat milk for infant nutrition, the benefits of whole goat milk formula, as well as the research supporting the safety and the benefits of whole goat milk formula. So let's start with why goat milk. And I really wanted to start by acknowledging that, of course, breastfeeding is always the best source of nutrition for infants. It provides many benefits for the infant as well as for the mother. But when breastfeeding is not possible for one reason or another, infant formula is the only alternative source of nutrition in the first 4 to 6 months of life. And traditionally, cow milk formulas have been the primary source, alternative source of protein for infants. But there has been increasing interest in alternative sources to cow milk infant formula, and that is because some infants do not tolerate cow milk very well. And so both parents and healthcare professionals have increasingly been interested in alternative sources such as goat milk. So goat milk has actually been consumed for a very long time. Goats were actually the first domesticated animals that started about 10,000 years ago. And goat milk has also been a major source of infant nutrition when breastfeeding wasn't possible for at least 3,000 years. And the reason we know that is you can see on the right-hand side those little pots. They are very old, from the olden times, sippy cups, and animal protein traces have been found in those, including goat. And traditionally, goat milk has always been known for better tolerance, and has been used to treat digestive disorders in ancient medicine. And I will tell you why it has been seen as being better tolerated. First, I also wanted to say that unmodified goat milk and also not unmodified cow milk, they are not suitable for infants. So any animal milk has to be supplemented with essential nutrients to meet the infant's dietary needs as well as regulatory guidelines. And cow and goat infant formulas must provide appropriate levels of protein. They must provide essential fatty acids. They are not enough in unmodified milk, so we have to add that. And we add things like folic acid, vitamin B12 and iron, as well as other vitamins and minerals to make sure that we meet the infant's requirements. So goat milk infant formula is formulated to meet all regulatory standards and ensure infants meet all nutritional requirements. So what's very unique about goat milk is that it is naturally it has a very soft protein. It forms a really soft curd. And a key reason for that is because compared to cow milk, it has lower levels of a protein called alpha S1 casein. So you can see on the right-hand side, human milk is very low in alpha S1 casein, and human milk is very soft. And also goat milk, and certainly the goat milk we use in our formula, is also relatively low, a little bit higher than human milk, whereas cow milk has about 30% of alpha S1 casein. And in the picture below, you can see on the left-hand side, this is what happens when you expose goat milk to the conditions that you find in the infant's stomach. It's very soft curd. On the right-hand side, it is unmodified cow milk, and it forms a very hard curd. And so cow formulas need to add whey to make it softer and easier to digest, whereas goat milk is naturally soft, and no whey addition is needed to soften it. Because it is naturally soft, it also means that goat milk protein are actually more efficiently digested in whole goat milk formula, which is a formula that has had no whey added, so you have the original protein profile. You can see on this chart, on the left side, you have whole goat milk formula, so the protein composition has been retained. And you can see that after 160 minutes of in vitro digestion, which was an infant in vitro digestion model, nearly all of the casein and whey were digested. When you have a goat milk formula that has had whey added, the casein is also very efficiently digested, the whey a little bit less so. And with cow milk formula that was whey adjusted, only about 60 to 70% of whey and casein proteins were digested after 160 minutes. So the soft curd allows the enzymes to get to the protein more easily and break it down. Goat milk is also naturally A2. You may have heard of A2 and A1 beta casein. And there are those two types of beta casein, and they are actually only, one of them is only present in cow milk. So the A1 type has been linked to gastrointestinal discomfort. And that is because it releases higher levels of a protein chain called beta-casomorphin 7. That has been linked to discomfort in the gut as well as gut inflammation. On the other hand, A2 type beta-casein releases no or very little BCM7. And the only difference between A1 and A2 beta-casein is one single amino acid in position 67 of the amino acid chain. A2 type has proline, so it's very hard for the enzyme to cut the protein at that spot, whereas A1 has histidine, and it's very easy for the enzyme to cut the protein in that spot, releasing large amounts of beta-casomorphin 7. And so studies support the benefits of milk free from A1 type beta-casein, so-called A2 milk, including improved gastrointestinal symptoms. Goat milk contains only A2 type beta-casein, and so does human milk. Goat milk also has naturally higher levels of some bioactive components that are relevant to infants. Goat milk contains actually relatively high levels of nucleotides. So you can see human milk has about 7.7 milligrams per 100 milliliter. Goat milk itself has actually more than that, but once you add ingredients to the formula to make it a suitable infant formula for infants, you have about 4 milligram naturally, whereas cow milk does not naturally contain nucleotides. Interestingly, the oligosaccharides levels are also higher in goat milk compared to cow milk. They are up to about 6 times higher. They're not as high as human milk. Human milk is a superstar when it comes to oligosaccharides, but nevertheless, it is higher than goat milk. And the milk fat is also different in that goat milk contains about twice as much of easily absorbed medium chain fatty acids than cow milk fat. So to summarize the first part, why goat milk, it is naturally soft and easy to digest due to lower alpha S1 casein levels, similar to human milk. Goat milk is naturally A2, like human milk. And compared to cow milk, goat milk is higher in oligosaccharides, nucleotides, and medium chain fatty acids. And very importantly, goat milk formula meets all nutritional requirements. And neither unmodified goat or cow milk are suitable for an infant. Now I will talk about the benefits of whole goat milk formula. Note that I emphasize whole, and I will explain what whole goat milk formula is. So whole goat milk formula is made with only whole goat milk, and we use fresh whole goat milk, so it has not been processed before. And we do not add whey. So we retain the natural protein composition with a 20 to 80 whey to casein ratio. And we also retain the milk fat. So about 50% of the fat in our whole goat milk formula is milk fat. And I will explain why all those things are relevant. On the right-hand side, you can see a comparison with a typical cow formula. It's usually made with skim milk and whey protein concentrates, has very little milk fat, usually is mostly made with vegetable oils. So I would like to talk about whey, because you might say, well, actually, isn't whey added to make the protein profile closer to breast milk? So it is true that human milk has about 60% of the protein is whey protein. You can see that the bigger parts in the dark blue is alpha-lactalbumin, and then the light blue is a mix of other proteins. Those include bioactive proteins such as lactoferrin, immunoglobulins, osteopontin. We all know human milk has a lot of components that really protect the baby early in life. When you look at the whey composition of both goat and cow milk, you can see that the biggest whey protein is actually beta-lactoglobulin, which is not present in human milk. And beta-lactoglobulin is a key allergen. And the reason why it is a key allergen, it gets poorly digested in the stomach, so it goes into the intestine intact, and so it has a very high triggering potential. So what happens when you add whey to formula? Of course, you increase the levels of this key allergen, beta-lactoglobulin. So while on the surface it may look like you're closer to breast milk because you have a 60 to 40 whey to casein ratio, actually when you break it down to the next level, it no longer looks as similar. And here I have the same data, but on the right-hand side I added the whole goat milk formula. And you can see it is lower in this key allergen, beta-lactoglobulin. And also, I also highlighted in green alpha S1 casein. As mentioned, goat milk is naturally lower, which is also good because it is another key allergen. Now let's look at retaining the goat milk fat and what that means. It's actually really good to retain milk fat. If you think about human milk, that is 100% milk fat. Unfortunately, we cannot do that with infant formula because we have to add some vegetable oils to ensure that sufficient essential fatty acids are added. But the milk fat delivers milk fat globule membrane, which is the membrane that surrounds the fat globule. in milk, and it is very rich in components such as phospholipids, cholesterol, as well as bioactive proteins. The milk fat also delivers cholesterol, and whilst as adults we sometimes think of cholesterol as not being so good, for infants it is absolutely important. Both cholesterol and phospholipids are really important building blocks for the brain. So delivering about twice the levels of cholesterol than standard formula that has vegetable oils added is very, very beneficial. Milk fat also is naturally high in S-2-palmitic acid. S-2-palmitic acid provides key benefits. It is associated with softer stools, reduced crying, improved bone strength because it doesn't bind with calcium, and so calcium doesn't get lost through the stool, and increased bifidobacteria in the gut. So you can see whole goat milk formula has about 30% of palmitic acid in the SN2 position, whereas a standard vegetable oil-based formula has only about 5%. So whole goat milk formula delivers unique benefits, and they are really a combination of benefits that are naturally provided through the goat milk itself, but also the benefits provided through how we make the formula by not adding whey and retaining 50% milk fat. So here you can see kind of the core benefits that are provided as a summary by whole goat milk formula. Naturally easy digestion is a really key feature of whole goat milk formula, and that is delivered through lower levels of alpha-S1 casein and therefore a softer curd and easier digestion. SN2-palmitic acid being naturally A2 and containing higher levels of easily absorbed medium-chain fatty acids. But the other key benefit is that it is naturally lower in the two key allergens, beta-lactoglobulin and alpha-S1 casein. And I will present some information later that will relate to these lower allergen levels. And then it provides components to support the gut microbiota, including oligosaccharides, MFGM and SN2-palmitic acid, brain and cognition, I already mentioned MFGM and cholesterol, as well as immune function, which once again MFGM contributes, as well as nucleotides and oligosaccharides. So now I'm going to talk about the research supporting the safety and benefits of whole goat milk formula. I mentioned that we have a lot of publications, more than 60, and these are just some of the highlights of DGC's extensive research. I will talk through the ones where you see a flag because they're the ones that we have done in infants. And I would also note 2012, the yellow star. Goat milk formula got approved in Europe based on our research. So the first study we did was done in New Zealand. It was done in early 2000s in healthy term infants, less than 3 days old. We recruited 72 infants. The intervention was whole goat milk formula or a standard cow milk formula up to 6 months of age, and we looked at growth as well as tolerability and safety. We found that infant growth was comparable between the groups, and we also mapped it against New Zealand breastfed data, so also very much aligned with that. We saw that the stool frequency was actually greater in the whole milk formula group compared to the cow milk formula group, but we saw no differences in other parameters. We then did a second larger study because the first one was not deemed large enough for the European Union, and so we did another study. This time in Australia, we once again included healthy term infants, less than 2 weeks old. We had about 300 infants either consuming whole goat milk formula, cow milk formula, and we had a breastfed reference group. Once again, the primary aim was to look at growth and safety. And so what we found is, and you can see it on the right-hand side, that infant growth was really comparable between all the groups, and it really shows that whole goat milk formula is a safe option that supports growth. And very importantly, also all nutritional biomarkers were within normal ranges. There was some other data coming out of that study on the gut microbiota. So there was a significant, the total microbiota, so beta diversity of 2-month-old infants, it was closer to that of breastfed infants compared to the cow formula group. And you can also see, while the bifidobacteria on the right-hand side, it was significantly different to breastfed infants, it was less different between breast and cow. And we also saw in that study a 1/3 lower incidence of eczema in the whole goat milk formula and cow milk formula group. And I will talk about that again a little bit later. Or I should say it was not significant, and that study, it was a post hoc analysis, so the study was not designed to detect an effect, which is why it wasn't different. We also did a study in Korea. It was an observational study, so we recruited healthy term infants. They were followed from birth. The parents chose whether they wanted to breastfeed or whether they wanted to formula feed. If they wanted to formula feed, they could either select a cow milk formula from the just off the shelf or our whole goat milk formula. And then we looked at growth, stool consistency, and frequency. You can see the number that were exclusively breastfed was actually very high. It was very important not to undermine breastfeeding with the study, but we also had a good number of formula-fed infants. So what we found in that study was that infant growth was comparable between groups, once again supporting the safety of whole goat milk formula. But very interestingly, the stool frequency and consistency in infants fed whole goat milk formula was more comparable to breastfed infants than infants fed cow milk formula. And you can see the significant differences were always between breastfeeding and cow formula. There were no significant differences between breastfed infants and those fed goat milk formula. There were 2 other studies that I just wanted to briefly mention. So we did a study called the Tiger study, another randomized controlled trial in Thailand. And we looked at the effect of giving whole goat milk formula or cow milk formula during the transition from breastfeeding to formula feeding. We found a trend towards a greater reduction of regurgitation. But what was also very interesting was that we found that salivary markers for inflammation and stress significantly reduced following 2 weeks of consumption of whole goat milk formula, while the same was not seen with cow milk formula. And we also did a study in France showing that whole goat milk formula is very well liked, it supports appetite, and was actually associated with a higher quality of life. And the reason we looked at liking is there's sometimes a misperception that goat formula doesn't taste good, but actually we find that babies very much like it. Now I want to talk about the latest research we are doing, and I just wanted to give some background on that. So we're at the moment doing a very large study in Europe looking at whole goat milk formula for eczema prevention. And the reason was that I mentioned it already. We did the post hoc analysis in the Australian growth study where we found a 1/3 lower incidence of eczema. As I already mentioned, This was not significantly different. The study was not designed for that. But our scientific advisor, Professor Koletzko from Munich, who is one of the key experts in infant nutrition, he said to us, eczema is such a horrible condition for infants. It has a really big burden on the quality of life of infants as well as their families. And really, it would be great if we could do a study to see whether this effect is real, because there's so little at the moment that helps prevent eczema that he thought it just was very important to do this study. And we also saw in some other studies have shown that goat milk is less allergenic and that it has immunomodulatory properties. So that also gave us more comfort to go on this journey and do the study. So the study is called Goat Infant Formula Feeding and Eczema Study, or GIRAFFE study. We published the protocol in a British Medical Journal. If anyone would like to see that, there's a QR code. So it is a double-blind, randomized controlled study, multi-center. We recruited more than 2,100 infants. That is the biggest goat formula study in the world and one of the biggest infant formula feeding studies in the world. We compared whole goat milk formula with a standard cow milk formula, and the primary endpoint was cumulative incidence of atopic dermatitis up to 12 months of age, but we are following the children up to at least 5 years of age. So the study is led by Professor Koletzko, and we have 6 study sites in Spain and 4 study sites in Poland. So here is just how the study was done in a nutshell, and I'm only focusing here on the atopic dermatitis outcomes. So infants were recruited between birth and 3 months of age. The parents had to have decided to formula feed already. We did not want to undermine breastfeeding. So most of the infants had already started on in most cases, a cow formula. Then the infants were given either whole goat milk formula or cow formula, blinded. The intervention lasted from recruitment up to 12 months of age. Now at 4 months, 6 months, and 12 months, we had study visits. So the parents went with the infant to the study personnel, and they used what are called the UK Working Party criteria to diagnose atopic dermatitis. The benefit of those criteria is that they are objective. The challenge with those criteria was that the most important component is that there is itching, which is either scratching or rubbing. Now with very young infants, this is not always easy to determine. So we definitely had fewer AD cases using this method than we would have expected. And the other reason would be that, of course, it's only 3 time points. Eczema is fluctuating, and so it may be possible that the eczema was not present at the study visit. We did have 2 phone calls at 8 and 10 months where parents also were asked to diagnose the infant based on those criteria. But to make sure we capture all other atopic dermatitis cases, we also had atopic dermatitis diagnosed by a doctor, so by their own pediatrician, for example. And that turned out to be the more sensitive measure. So unfortunately, I'm not unable to share the results yet. We have submitted the results to a medical publication. But what I can say is that the preliminary results look very promising. we see a protective effect of whole goat milk formula on risk of atopic dermatitis as diagnosed by the doctor in all infants in the per protocol population. But we saw really the biggest protective effect, and that's where we are extremely excited, in high-risk infants, so those with parental history of dermatitis. And of course, that would be very relevant for you. You deal a lot with preterm babies who are also at a higher risk of developing eczema. And I just wanted to highlight one more study which was not done by us, but I thought it might be particularly of interest for this audience. It was a study done in Taiwan in mice where they looked at goat milk compared to cow milk and the effect on allergen-induced airway inflammation in offspring mice. So the moms were fed goat milk or cow milk when they were pregnant and lactating. And goat milk actually conferred a protective activity onto that allergen-induced airway inflammation. So there could be a way, and that those are the conclusions by the authors, that the mother-to-child biological action may provide protective effect on atopy development in offspring. So it could also be that goat milk might play a role during pregnancy and lactation. So to summarize, the clinical studies support the safety of whole goat milk formula, supporting healthy growth. Whole goat milk formula is well tolerated and liked, and research supports the digestive benefits of whole goat milk formula. And it is looking as like a very promising option for eczema prevention in formula-fed infants. And I will leave those two QR codes up. So if you would like to receive the manuscript once it's published, you can sign up using the left-hand QR code, and then the right-hand side is for the protocol. And thank you so much for your attention, and I'm very happy to take questions.